I look back at how I was behaving during additional music and the things I was doing. And now I have a perspective where I'm like, if I had met those needs for myself, if I had, for example, like been writing an album during that time where my creative needs are getting met, I would have been able to tolerate those projects very happily because I was putting responsibility on that work to fulfill a personal need that I had. Yep. And it's just been such a shift for me to realize it's actually my responsibility to meet my needs, not my job's responsibilities. And ideally there's overlap, but it's actually my job. And if it's not fitting in the work, then it's kind of two ways to solve it. I can try and change the work, or I can change what I do and hopefully do a little bit of both at the same time.
What's up, everyone? It's Drew. Welcome back to No Set Path. Today, I'm talking with LA-based composer Zach Heyde about the reality of making a living as a creative professional. Zach's worked on everything from Kung Fu Panda to building a YouTube channel with over 100,000 subscribers. He also just released a self-produced album entitled The Call of Raven's Hollow. It sounds really great. You should totally check it out. We dig into some things that nobody really teaches you in school, like how to network without being pushy, finding balance between art and business, and why most creatives struggle to sustain a love for what they do when it becomes their job. The conversation gets a little real about the potential isolation of creative work and some practical ways to push through that as well. If you're getting value from these conversations, please hit subscribe, leave a 5-star review, a thumbs up on YouTube, whatever works, and share the show with someone who might dig it or benefit from what we talk about here. Your support is always appreciated. Lastly, I have a newsletter over on Substack called Creative Balance, where I talk about aligning your passions, skills, and goals so you can succeed as a creative without burning yourself out. The link for that is thedrewenglish.substack.com. And with all that said, here's my conversation with composer Zach Heyde. What's a little bit of your background? Like how did you get to where you are now in, a short, kind of like short little...
The truncated here. Version. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I've kind of always had music in my blood. That's just what I was born doing. I think started piano lessons when I was like 7. And even right around that time, like I was still doing composing. So it was kind of something I always had the North Star for. But as I've pushed through it, we have our kind of like childhood dream of what we think we want to do, and it's like this foggy version. And then as you move towards it, you kind of get more clarity as to what parts of it you do and don't want. And so I've pushed in a lot of ways and done a lot of the things that like kid Zach would be like, that's the thing. One of the cool things that I did, like one of my favorite projects, was I got to work for Bob Lydecker, who is another composer, on Kung Fu Panda the Dragon Knight back in 2022, I think. And that was like my dream gig because it was like everything I love about kids animation, got to work with a great composer who was a really nice guy, got to deliver music every week, score different scenes. Super gratifying as a composer. Since then, I've kind of pushed in different directions. I've done like some indie stuff as well, but I've also always had like an interest in education too. So teaching in some capacities. And when I used to do teaching, it used to be piano lessons, music lessons, composition stuff. Now I've wound up having to like shift into teaching more of the entrepreneurship of composers, because what I've realized going through it, and I'm sure you relate to this, is like nobody teaches us as creative people how to actually make a living doing this. We get so much education around the craft of what we do, but not actually how to then take that and utilize it in a sustainable career. And so I wished always that I had that kind of guidance, but it never really existed for me, even in college. And so what I do now, along with pushing my career for myself, is also trying to like extend it backwards and do mentorship for composers so I can hopefully guide them a little bit faster with a little bit less pain than I experienced in my journey.
I agree with you. It's like anything I've ever done as a creative professional, and it's looked like a few different things. It's all been trial by fire and kind of figure it out on your own, because nobody's there to teach you the ropes, so to speak, right? From a business perspective or like making a sustainable living perspective. Yes, there's a lot of emphasis around craft, and all that's important, but the craft isn't going to do you any good if you can't make a living doing it, if that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And not everybody's trying to do that. You definitely seem like one of those people who was like called to do that I was thinking as you were talking, it's like where I fell off the music boat is I should have taken piano lessons when I was a kid. Because I was all in on music. I went to music school. Like I had a little career as a composer and producer before finding filmmaking. And growing up, my mother was always like, I will pay for piano lessons. I think you should take piano lessons. I was like, no, I want to play guitar, which I did, and never took piano. And I think that must have been
You think that would have changed your path?
I mean, maybe, man. I still to this day wish I had done it. It's like the one thing I can like make my way through the keyboard and play a little bit, but I really wish I knew the instrument well. So
yeah,
anyway, it's
funny.
That's
a lot of composers really wish that they were good pianists. That's one thing I hear a lot from people, because a lot of the work that we do in these days is in front of a computer when we're composing, and the easiest kind of extension, I'm looking down because I'm looking at the keyboard that I have in front of me, is a keyboard where you're basically inputting, notes by note. And most other instruments don't lend themselves super well to that. They either don't have the technology to get into a DAW, like recording software that way, or they're just not idiomatic to be able to play all the other instruments. So pianos, I was kind of lucky in that way that piano was what I had learned. But funny enough, I also know a lot of composers who don't play piano very well, and are like either drummers or guitarists and program stuff like point and click. Like it looks like they're making coding software when they're composing,
I've seen that, and I've tried doing some of that, and I can't. Like it's not
not very. The thing that's tricky, I think, with technology, and I think it's an interdisciplinary thing, is the way that we engage with our art prior to any of the career requirements is often really different than the way that we are required to engage in the art when it comes to doing it at a professional level. And I think that what's really tough for people, what I've seen with composers, is they feel super disconnected from the process of making music on a computer. And it's interesting. There's so much resistance. People are like, oh, can't I just use pencil and paper? And it's like, you can, but it's not really going to translate if you're doing it as a career. And so there's a lot of pain in the process of finding kind of an actual outlet in your professional setting, making art that still feels creatively fulfilling. That's like a really challenging thing to do, because there's all those new skill sets. You have to learn how to get faster at stuff. You have to learn how to collaborate with clients and still enjoy the music or the art that comes out when you're done with it. Like it's a thing to be able to do what you love for a living, continue to love it, and find that engagement point into it.
Truthfully, I never really put that together in regards to music. So I loved music, and I never figured out how to sustain the love while also trying to build a career. And it created a really tricky block for me. So I professionally kind of set that aside and, kind of naturally found film and video, which has been a really good fit and is analogous in a lot of ways. But I think that's spot on. I think that's a really difficult gap to bridge for a lot of people. Musician or otherwise. Just if you're a creative and you're trying to make a living doing it, it's like, how do you sustain the love? And I struggle with that in my own right. A lot of times I find that I'm lacking energy to make creative projects because, the last thing I want to do is pick up a camera again after going out and filming a bunch of jobs that are like, they're fine. It's work, but it's not, Yeah,
you've already done it. You've already done the thing. Yeah. I totally get that. And you build a different kind of relationship with it. I mean, I have the same thing with music. And it's interesting because I think that there's also a lot of stigmas in the creative industries about like what's constituted as like actually being a real professional creative and what that looks like. And I think that a lot of those stigmas really block people up too. Like for me, in 2022, like when I was doing Kung Fu Panda, I was writing the most music that I ever had. I think I was writing probably about 10 minutes of music a week between that and other projects. And when it comes to like orchestral music. That's a lot. It's a lot. It's very, very intense. You're not really thinking that much. You're kind of just go.
To step on you for a second,
Yeah.
just in case people don't have a frame of reference, like how long on average, if you had to average it out, does it take to create 1 minute of music for something like that?
I mean, with 15 years of experience, I can get a minute done in 3 hours about. That's like kind of my average, but that's just about as fast as it gets.
Yeah, you're talking almost a full week's worth of work to get 10 minutes done.
Yeah, just for the composing. Yeah, exactly. You're talking that's 30 hours for composing, and that's not including anything else that you have to do to be able to sustain your business, like networking or your bookkeeping or admin or any of it. And that's assuming that you're at peak performance, or you don't get revisions, in which case usually both aren't true. So it was on top of just the time that was required for that. What I found was I just like having more time to think through my art. I mean, part of the engagement, the thing I enjoy about making music is the gestation period when I'm sitting with something and it's not quite working and I actually have some time to work that through. If you're doing 10 minutes of music a week and it's taking you 3 hours per minute, like you don't have that luxury of time. You have to just go. And so for me, like one of the challenging parts for me in terms of just ego and the way the industry gets presented was still feeling like a composer, even if I decided, hey, like I don't want to work and write music all the time. Like I want to have a different relationship to it. And I think in some industries, I'm curious if it's true for yours, there is an idea that gets put forth that it's like, you should want to do this all the time. And you should do this all the time. Otherwise, you're not a real insert thing here.
Yeah, I think in my world, it looks a little, in terms of like on-set film work, it's a little more of like emphasis on hustle culture. It's like you should want to be like out on set all the time, like working super long hours and, just basically like I see it in real time. I see friends and colleagues just sacrificing their personal lives, their personal relationships, their mental health, like all these things to go out and shoot projects that are like, yeah, you're getting out and you're collaborating and you're maybe leveling up some skills just by like repetition and having the time in. But, what are you sacrificing in the interim while you're out there doing that? And I talk about this a lot and I've talked about it on past episodes. And it's this thing that I struggle with too, because I have all the ambition in the world, but, there is a certain level of sacrifice that I just can't make. And especially now that I have a kid, it's like a whole different world. And kudos to the people who can make it work and build like what one would qualify as like an illustrious career in whatever creative field they're choosing. It's tricky. It's really tricky.
I mean, there's everybody has different kind of strengths and weaknesses too. Like I wonder this about some composers that I know who can just crank out music all the time. I mean, I certainly know some who work all the time that seem to me to be very unhappy or like at the very least unregulated with things. But I'm sure there's also composers out there who work all the time that really love it. And so I think there's a different balance for everybody. And the tricky thing is, in my experience, like you just don't know what your balance is until you're, I guess, out of balance. And then you have to contend with the fact that it's like, hey, like I actually don't, this balance doesn't work for me. And then the very tricky thing is like, do you have the ability to like become aware of that and to recognize what things are off balance and how to actually leverage those changes so that you can get back in balance. Like a weird one for me was I stopped doing additional music last year. And the reason I stopped was because I felt like I was lacking creative autonomy and like creative freedom with these projects. I wasn't able to communicate with clients the way that I wanted to. So I had all these reasons why I left. And since then, it's been interesting because in some ways, I think that it was a great decision, and I think it's helped me to get back on track with that. In other ways, I look back at how I was behaving during additional music and the things I was doing, and now I have a perspective where I'm like, if I had met those needs for myself, if I had, for example, like been writing an album during that time where my creative needs are getting met, I would have been able to tolerate those projects very happily because I was putting responsibility on that work to fulfill a personal need that I had. Yep. And it's just been such a shift for me to realize it's actually my responsibility to meet my needs, not my job's responsibilities. And ideally there's overlap, but it's actually my job. And if it's not fitting in the work, then it's kind of two ways to solve it. I can try and change the work, or I can change what I do and hopefully do a little bit of both at the same time.
I love that, man. In fact, yeah, I take a pause because I'm like, oh my God, this is what I do a lot of the time, totally subconsciously, is I tie my creative satisfaction or whatever to work, just because it's kind of all I have time for. And it is not great.
Right.
So it's great. So what is great is that you have that realization and you've like become a more aware professional because of it, right? Which is really, really cool. You say that, and then for some reason, this is going to sound weird or a little like woo-woo, but it's like I felt like this tension release from my chest a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, oh my God, yeah. Zach gets it. He sees me, and then like somebody else, I don't know. I just made the association. I was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
I think I had a hard line for a while where it was like, it's helpful to a point, like it's been helpful in many ways for me being able to kind of try to be as uncompromising as possible with making sure like things are lined up. But life is life, and not everything is always going to be perfect with the work that I do. And sometimes things are stepping stones as well. Like, I mean, additional music, it was, and if I do it again, is a stepping stone towards something else. And the stepping stones aren't always like the most fun thing to contend with. So it's like, I could suffer through it, or I could like meet my needs in some external way and then be able to show up better for that.
Yeah, well, speaking of stepping stones, it's kind of like a little bit of a good segue, because a stepping stone is that like mindset shift, right? Or how you approach something, but it also could be something very physical and tangible, like moving to LA. So like, how long have you been in LA, and what was the impetus? Like, where did you move from, and what was the like impetus to get your butt out to the West Coast?
Yeah. I was always on the fence if I was going to come to LA. The tipping point was I was in Tennessee with my now wife and my friend, who we were also kind of business partners and working together. And he decided to move to LA. And I was like, okay, I guess it makes sense. So I moved in 2019. Didn't think I was going to like it. Didn't think I was going to want to stay. Honestly, I was kind of pessimistic about it. Wound up really liking it, actually. I really like the West Coast. As someone who comes from Connecticut and has been there for a while, like it's been a nice change of scenery. And the impetus really was, kind of always felt like I'd be capable of doing my job remotely, but the impetus was more personal desire of like, I don't know any creative people. I don't relate to other people. And I want to connect with other creative people who get what I do. And so I really kind of came out here with a personal intention, and I think that's what kind of helped me to build relationships with people, because the flip of that is usually people come out here going like, I need work, and I came out here going, I want to meet people.
Yeah,
and
you took words out of my mouth. You took the words out of my mouth, and that's the thing. Most, like 98% of the people who wind up in LA are going out there to fulfill some sort of like professional dream or desire. And, I just think back to earlier this year when the fires were happening out there, and I would see social media posts, and somebody who's a director, I forget who it was. And if I can find it, maybe I'll throw it up in the show notes or something. But it was essentially like one of the lines from this quote he put up was, it's just a place full of dreamers trying to like fulfill something from their childhood or something. Like
Mhm.
I'm getting it wrong. Like I'm off base, but the quote was really like very real and very like, yeah, that's what everybody's trying to do is
Yeah.
seek some sort of like professional dream. So for you to flip it on its head and be like, I could work from wherever. I just want to be around more creative people. I feel that puts you in a good position to not have like, to not be disappointed by certain expectations.
Yeah, it helped a lot. I noticed that when I came in and was really like eager to try and get work opportunities on some occasions, nothing would happen. I think I'd just push people away probably. And then when I came in a more casual setting to just like hang out with someone and I'd never mentioned work or anything, naturally there's kind of like this gap that happens at the end where it's like, oh, you seem like a cool person. Like, hey, like I'll let you know if I have any projects. Like people really go out of their way actually to help other people. I think it's just the energy we carry that can play a big impact in how people feel. Because when people want work, and I've been on the other side of this a lot too, where composers want work from me, that pushy energy is just like, it really makes you retract. But when there's the energy where someone's just a cool, chill person to be around and just feels like kind of self-assured, then there's kind of like is there anything I can do for you energy that happens? Yeah. And I was lucky too, because the people I met out here, just great people. I know that they're in all the industries. There are some people that are not so great. But everybody that I met, I was very lucky to be around people who treated me well, warned me about things to stay away from, didn't abuse my work ethic or my eagerness to find opportunities. Like they were just great people and they treated me well.
That's great, man. And it seems to have been a move that has paid off for you because you were able to build an actual real composing career. You've been doing this for way longer than you've been in LA, but something that you do that people may not know is that you have a YouTube channel that just recently crossed 100,000 subscribers, which is amazing.
Thanks, man.
So congratulations. And also, one little thing I noted down here, and we can unpack YouTube and what the YouTube journey looks like, but like, what did YouTube do for you? And I don't necessarily mean professionally, but I mean more like, what did it do for you as a creative? Starting that up and starting to post things there. And I've only known you for a year or so I haven't dug back into the depths of your YouTube channel. Not that you would want me to. Yeah. But what did that do for you? Like, what was the whole desire to start doing that? And how long have you been doing it at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. Well, I've been doing it forever. Probably, I think 18 years.
That's so long.
Yeah, it's more than half my life. It's a really, really long time. What did it do for me? I think that it helped me to build a muscle that when I have things that are important to me, not only to have an outlet to do it, but I believe that people care. Like I believe that it matters and that it's worth sharing. I think that's one of the biggest things that YouTube gave me. And I only think I'm aware of that because of other artists that I talk to where that is so difficult for them, that they have pieces of art that they're proud of or ideas that they're really passionate about, but they don't share them. There's like a disconnect and it just kind of stays within them. And that was something that was kind of always impressed on me by my family and people around me, which I'm grateful for, which was like, hey, like it was that classic, you have a gift, you should be sharing this with people. And in the beginning, I resisted that a lot because I was like, but this is mine. I want to do it. I don't want to like, this is my thing. But I warmed up to it. And I think that that's what YouTube's really allowed me to do is it's given me a platform where I can share things, whether it's sometimes it's music, sometimes it's something I learned. Sometimes it's just like some random thought I have. And sometimes it's just a reaction to something. It's always been like a big mixed bag of stuff. But that's the engine that's kind of helped me keep going. And I think as a byproduct, it's enabled me to build trust with people, both in my mentorship stuff, but also as a composer in my career.
That's a really great answer. I really love that take, especially now where, I was never an early adopter of YouTube. I've kind of like fallen backwards into it. And, I have similar, like I post stuff for this show and that's all I do. I have similar desires now to start sharing more of myself. And I want to start figuring out what that looks like and like sharing more of that publicly. And it's from a very like authentic, similar place as you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I love that answer though, is because so much, if I ask somebody else, what has YouTube done for you? I feel like there are a lot of people who would give me a very like formulaic, like, oh, well, I have this many subscribers and I'm monetized, so I'm making like this amount of money and blah, blah, blah. And it's viewed as a business, which people have legit, like all they do is YouTube as a business and they make a ton of money and that's great. Like no shade, but the intention is very different.
Oh
right?
yeah. And I'm very sensitive to the intention in which I do stuff. It's for better or worse. I think often it's a very painful thing for me.
Sure.
But I think it's a net positive. And I know the difference between when I'm making a video because I want some like back end business thing versus me making a video because I genuinely care. And the ironic thing is like the ones where the energy is right wind up creating more impact for the business anyway. The stuff that I did where it was just like, let me just do something for my business and like do something to grow the business. The videos would perform well, but they wouldn't do anything for my business, really. They would just create vanity metrics. Like this video got a lot of views, but nothing happened. And then the videos where I would come from like my heart and talk about something that really matters to me would get like 100th of the views or something. But the resonance with the people would be so much more potent that it would wind up creating back-end things. I would get people like emailing me about, some business opportunity or people saying like, I just really want to work with you. And so I think the energy and the intention is everything. And especially now when everything is so easy to make like Mr. Beast optimized videos, like we can't play that game anymore because it's already been won. We have to play a different game in order to build trust with people.
It's interesting. The theme here with everything we've talked about so far as you're concerned, is like really leaning into authenticity and like keeping that at the forefront, which is, to take a step back and, when you were talking about networking and meeting people, it's like people can sniff out bullshit a mile away. It's like, the best way to network with anybody is just like go out and make friends because, the road goes both ways. It's like if you're trying to, force yourself on somebody to get work, how do you know you're going to like working with them and vice versa?
Well said.
So
yeah, 100%.
If you can't hang out, really, then what's the point? And, this goes across to the YouTube thing too. It's like, what's the point of doing all that stuff if you're not going to put your real self out there? And that comes back to really benefit you because you're putting your authentic self out there and sharing what you want to share in the moment. And you have a variety of things up on your channel that really, like, it is the best business card you could have ever created for yourself because you got almost 2 decades of like, you want to see what I'm all about? Here's my YouTube channel. I've got 100,000 subscribers. Knock yourself out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's and I've seen people, because I have some YouTube friends, whatever, people who do content creation, and everybody goes through the pain at some point of not feeling like their authentic self on their social media platforms, especially if they have big levels of growth. And it's this really, really painful process. And people kind of do like a handful of options depending on what works for them. They either just decide like, this is just going to be my like persona, and then like I'm just going to be me over here and separate those things. Some people can't handle the rift at all and they just quit because they just feel like they're living a double life. And then the path that I took was like, I need to bridge these two things together. I need to like, sure, if I'm feeling steered off course, I need to bring this thing back so that like when I show up on camera, I don't feel like a YouTuber. I could just like turn on a camera and talk.
Yeah, man. I totally get that. And some of like in the recent past content that you've put up has been just you talking to the camera about like business, not even necessarily music or just like life. And that is also counterbalanced by you've been writing an album for yourself, like your own passion project, and kind of recording yourself as you compose, which is super enjoyable to go and like watch basically the highlight videos that you put together from that.
Thanks.
You know, and it's a really great juxtaposition of like, yeah, you get some creativity. Yeah, you get some real world like thought, like real world thinking and like light mentorship, I guess is the way to put it. And it's just it's a really nice amalgam of like all of the things you're trying to do or all of the pieces of you, and you're just putting it into one place that people can like kind of pick and choose what they want to look at or take in at the given time. And you know, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you do it and you put it out there and it's just this thing that exists. And you know, where you are now, it seems like you're a lot more passive is not the word, because I know it's an active thing for you, but I think
it feels more passive. It does feel passive for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I've tried to find like the lowest effort version of it. And you know what's tricky about this stuff too is the things that now probably feel effortless for me, when it comes to things like YouTube, would still require effort for someone like just getting started, because obviously 18 years, you know, like I was not a good public speaker on camera at all in the beginning. So there's pieces of that. I think the effortlessness part is about just trusting that the experience that I have is enough now for me to just kind of let go and let this feel easy for me. And I think that's ultimately what it's been, is it's like, I don't need fluff anymore. I don't need to polish this thing up. I just show up as me, keep it easy. And whoever is going to benefit from this, like, let's just let the video determine, and the algorithm and anything else, like, determine who it resonates with and kind of run from there.
Yeah. And I think it requires a certain level of self-confidence to get to that place. And self-confidence, speaking for myself, is something I struggle with a lot. And I think everybody who's in a creative profession will struggle with self-confidence, kind of like infinitely. I think it just, I don't think it ever goes away. It's just how you kind of shut that little voice up in the back of your head, long enough to just put some of yourself out there and, you know, just say, do what you said. Like, this is me. This is who I am. I'm putting that out there. And just kind of letting it live. So that's really cool.
Now that the videos feel aligned, when I was feeling misaligned, I used to check stats all the time, because it was like the only thing that would make it worth it would be like if a video would do well, and then if it didn't do well, I'd get pissed off. So it's like, now that I'm enjoying making the videos, it's a set it and forget it, and it's so much more like, I always thought I needed to have like this regimented schedule in order to be consistent. But it's actually just, I need to enjoy making videos. And once I enjoy making videos, I'm naturally consistent.
That's really wise. That's really wise and good advice for people that are kind of on that train. Essentially, in addition to composing and having a YouTube channel, you started an education business for composers, for lack of a better term, right? And it's gone through a couple iterations. It looks a little bit different now than when we first met. But before we talk about like what exactly you're doing in the composer education space, why? Right? Like, no. But it's a real question, because some people, it's like, this is like education and education as a business is like a big thing. I also feel like, personally, quality online education across multiple disciplines is super, super important. Because creatively speaking, like, I went to music school, I went for recording. Yes, I learned stuff in school, but I learned 100 times more from just being out in the world and like doing the work and doing the jobs and like gaining experience, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming, you know, there's an element of wanting to pay that forward that goes into it. But why start an education business? What was like the the kind of spark that started that all up. I just want to know the why part.
Oh, yeah. It's funny, I always tried to run away from education, like in my business, in my life. But it chases me back. Like I think that's another thing that's kind of in my blood a little bit, and it's inescapable. Because I used to do, like I said, I used to do teaching piano and composition and all those things. And it kind of went in a similar journey with those things as well as I have with the composing side of my career, where it's like, yeah, I kind of like teaching, but this feels a little off. Or I kind of like this. It's become a narrower and narrower thing. And kind of the big disconnect I felt for a while, initially why I leaned into education was just because the videos I was doing on YouTube were attracting a lot of composers. And so it sort of felt like a natural consequence to say, well, I may as well have some resources out here for people. And hopefully, if I can build a small portion of my business out of that, that'd be great. But that started to take a life of its own as I went on. And a lot of the pain that I felt in the process was in many ways like my career was whatever, level 5 or something, where I've worked through a bunch of these things in orchestration and all the nitty gritty. But the videos that I was creating as an educator were like level 2. So it was like teaching, essentially felt like teaching people like the piano again, where it's like teaching this, theory and really like entry level stuff. And that was a really big pain gap for me. So the long story short is the way it's been restructured now is the people I work with in my group, they're composers who also want to make music part of their life in some capacity. Some want to go full-time. Some just want a couple gigs. Some are way less interested in the money component, but just want like collaborative opportunities. And we basically meet once a week like we were doing with Rich. But the difference is the framing is all around really composer living, like the composer lifestyle. And so we talk creativity, we talk entrepreneurship, we talk about, sometimes we talk tactical stuff like music theory and things like that, but it's pretty rare because we wind up getting to the heart of what a lot of these things are, which is confidence and lots of emotional things. So now I'm very aligned with what I do. It barely even feels like I'm doing education, actually. It really feels like conversations like this with other creative people. I can't seem to get away from it. I seem to really enjoy having those creative conversations with people at a deeper level.
Got it. So, that's awesome. So just to recap, this is your mentorship group called what? So we can put it in the show notes.
Right now it's called the Pro Group. I'm very, very lame with names.
Hey man, whatever works.
It's way more than that. Like the Pro Group was created to say, hey, like this is for people who want to do composing in some kind of professional capacity. But in reality, like it's way more about entrepreneurship and authenticity and all the things that we're talking about here.
And is that the only thing you're doing in terms of the education business, or do you also have like a pre-done course, like the
there's the Bootcamp's kind of like the level 1 of this. So the Bootcamp I basically created to teach composers all of the soft skills that I had never been taught that helped me to find more work opportunities as a composer. So there's like a module on networking, there's one on marketing, but really it's about like being public in potentially online, what that looks like. There's one on pitching, kind of all the business skills. But as someone who didn't go to business school, it's more really talking about like how you do these sorts of things in a non-salesy way where you're still a human being as you're moving through the process of doing this stuff.
I think that's really important. I think a lot of people want to figure out, I think, again, it's a continual journey. Sorry, I'm my daughter got me sick. So
you're good. Everybody's sick now.
I think it's a continual journey. And, sales is tricky because, if you want to have a business, there is a sales component, but people don't want to sell to people and they don't want to feel like they're being sold to. But I also think everybody's concept of sales is like used car salesman, which it is not.
That's right.
Yeah, which is really interesting. And how's that part of the business going? You know,
it's been good. Honestly, like it's something that I've really exercised a lot of restraint in. It's something I've always felt that I could lean into the gas more on. And that's probably something that I will be doing more this year, is allowing this thing to grow in a stronger way, because there's a lot of really potent energy inside the group. Like the calls are really, really intense, like in a really positive way. And people come in, sometimes people don't say anything. And I still hear that they've been energized by the call and just by being part of it. So I think there's some really powerful stuff happening. And yeah, it's felt pretty effortless, honestly, in a lot of ways. I think it's felt very aligned with who I am and what I'm all about. And yeah, in the same way with YouTube, where I've tried to just trust that more and not make things too difficult for myself. I've tried to just trust this more and trust the value. And people, I mean, there's so much to it. Like I thought I was building one specific thing where I'd be like giving advice and, you know, teaching things. Turns out really like one of the big problems people are having is everybody feels so isolated in their journeys, you know, in their entrepreneurial journeys. It's the totally isolating thing. And just having a group of like-minded people to be able to come in every week and just be like, this thing sucks. Like I'm having trouble with this. It makes a huge difference. I'm kind of convinced that if I just didn't show up to the calls anymore, they'd still get equal value just by the thing existing now.
That's kind of a beautiful thing. You know, so it could kind of take on a life of its own ultimately, which is cool. What is, you know, I guess it all comes down to like, if we talk about, you know, the Bootcamp course that you created, and we talk about the pro group now that's like live mentorship, and we go think about, you know, what you've done for, you know, almost 2 decades with YouTube, all around this greater theme of like living life as a composer, where the intersection of like art meets business and commerce and all that stuff. One thing I keep hearing, and I did write it down just because based on other conversations we have, and it does reaffirm this for me, is like knowledge sharing is a big thing for you, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's like a formalized like business education course or like arm of your business, or it's just putting up whatever you feel like on YouTube. It's like knowledge sharing is a thing for you. Mm-hmm. What about that is so compelling?
Compelling's the right word. Compelling's the right word. It's like now I've had to rein this back, but I think the healthy version of it is that when I feel deeply, I can't help but do something with it. Mm-hmm. And that might be, in the past, that was more often creating music. That was sort of my expression for feel this thing, do something with it. I think as I've developed as a human, it's come out in more ways than just music. And so it comes out sometimes in writing, like on a newsletter. It comes out in sharing things with people, or calling somebody, or annoying my wife. It's most often that. Sometimes I think I have a YouTube channel so that I don't just like talk her ear off all day. But that's what it is at its best. Is it's really just feeling like abundant with some kind of energy, and it's like I do not have the physical capacity to keep this thing inside of me. It has to come out in some way.
That's cool. It's kind of like I wanted to have a bigger response, but I'm like thinking of something as I say that's cool. So it sounds a little dumb. That's really interesting to me. I really like that response to the question, you know, and I'm thinking kind of on the fly here, and hopefully via this, maybe somebody else will get something out of it. But it's like, I'm going to ask for your input on something, right? Not planned at all. But so on that, right? Because you said, I feel really deeply like I want to, you know, I need to do something with that. I have found myself in a very similar internal predicament lately. Let's call it the last 6 months. I don't know. I'm just picking a number. Let's call it 6 months, where I feel like I have all this stuff that I want to share. And it looks like different things. It's not, actually, none of it is me taking a camera and going and shooting something and like, look at these pretty pictures I made. That's actually not it. It's a lot of like, how do I view like life and business and creativity, like all these things that all of us kind of like have floating around in our head. And I've had for years, but now the difference is it's like, I'm like, oh my God, I need to express this somehow, right? And I have a newsletter that I've been blocked up on writing for the last month. So it's like I've sat down to write it many, many times and I've stopped. So it's like, if somebody's like, oh my God, I have this urge, I have this, I don't know what it is, but I have something inside me I need to share. What's your advice for that? Like, where would you start? What would that look like?
I think lowering the barrier to entry
Okay.
is very important with this stuff, because I think that there's a difference between like, I have to share this big crazy idea in the most perfect iteration of it, like in the biggest way. I think that tends to block people up because that there's a mismatch between like the energy that's felt and then obviously the planning that goes behind something. So for me, it's actually like kind of riding an impulsive energy where I don't really wait actually when I have the energy, because I know that the energy is something I kind of can't control. Like if I'm like dying to talk about a certain thing, I know that if I don't sit down and do something with that right in that moment, in an hour it could be gone, and I won't care about it anymore. And
right.
That's like very artistic way of looking at it, but I think that that's where it works at its best for me. Now I try not to do that if it's like 2 a.m. or something,
Sure.
to be like, I gotta record a video. But sometimes it like 8 p.m. was when I recorded my last video, just because it was burning up in me. But I think the key is the simplest point of entry is the way to go. Whether that's like recording, a video to the camera for yourself, like just talking about something, or just writing something down. I think that that's really important. And then I also think hitting the publish button on it before you overthink it again is also really important. Like just getting the message out as quickly as possible in its most raw form, because you can always take something down if it doesn't feel right, or refine the articulation of what you're trying to say over time. That's what happens often with me. But I always default to releasing things releasing things with good energy, as opposed to like holding on to things until it's perfect. That's kind of my default operating system with stuff.
Yeah, I think that's all real good sound advice. I have definitely hit the overthinking stage. So that is, and I'm a classic overthinker. Ask my wife. So all this tracks, but I think that's really sound advice. Limit the barriers, like simplify as much as possible. And, I think a lot of that even tracks back to, when you're really in the weeds professionally, and it's a lot of the work that we did in our group together. So many people, myself, you, anybody else in the group, anybody anywhere who is trying to like build something for themselves, I think very quickly and easily overcomplicate things for themselves. Yeah. And, we've spent a lot of time talking about like mindset and frameworks and things like that. And really what all that breaks down to is like, everybody just kind of overthinks too much.
That's right. And we have these patterns too, like something I just thought about while you were talking about it is, when we have those feelings that I got to talk about this or something, I would bet that each of us kind of has a default pattern of operation, something that we do as a response to that emotion, because we're habitual creatures. So we do stuff. In my case, like one of the things that I do is like run and tell my wife. That's like one of my default operating patterns. And sometimes that actually gets in the way of me making a video about something as opposed to like just sharing it with her. And I noticed that because we went to Joshua Tree in December.
Yeah,
and
beautiful Joshua Tree.
Oh my gosh, it was so great. And I got up much earlier than I usually do because I'm a night owl. But I got up early. My wife was still asleep. And so I had like an hour to myself in the morning. And I was like sitting on one of the chairs outside of the camper. And I had like one of those moments with those like striking, I got to talk about this kind of thing. And my wife was still asleep. And I was like, this is normally the moment where I would go tell her this thing. What do I do with this? And so it wound up becoming a newsletter episode because I had to get something out. I had to write something. And so it made me realize, so there's like these default patterns in what we decide is our like the thing that we do when we have that feeling. And for some people, it might be like telling a friend. For some people, it might be like writing, overthinking. There's positive and negative versions of those things, or constructive and non-constructive versions. And I think becoming aware of what our pattern is in those situations is helpful.
Yeah, man. That's really great. I think we can start to wrap this thing up.
Sweet.
I love all, like, this has been really great. And again, just to reiterate for people listening, Zach and I have known each other for a minute.
That's right.
We've never met in person. It's always been like this Zoom call type setup. But and we've had a lot of conversations, and every time we talk, and I include this conversation in it, I walk away with something where I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like an insight that I have not been privy to in the past. So for that, I thank you. I really appreciate it.
It's mutual, man. I love uncovering this stuff. And by the way, for the record, just to give you a plug on your own thing, your newsletter is awesome, man. I really enjoy your newsletter. I think you're a great writer.
Oh my God. See, this is what I need. Now I'm you validated me, Zach. Here we go. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, thank you. I'm going to get back to it. It's been a weird, the New Year transition every year is always weird for me, and this one was particularly hard, and I've been a little blocked up. So we'll get back to it. Before we go, are you working on anything new? Is there any fun updates on like work or anything like that coming down the road?
I have my recording session booked for the album, so that's going to be really fun.
Wait, what are you recording?
We're going to record strings for it.
Nice.
So it's going to be cool. First time I think in a personal project where I've booked out like an orchestra for something. So we're just going to do 2 tracks because orchestra's freaking expensive. Yeah, really expensive. Like we basically have 30 minutes to work with them. And oh my God. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a tight 30 minutes to try and get music done, but it'll be cool.
Are you recording in LA or are you remote?
We're doing remote. We're doing Budapest. They're like a really go-to for everybody, and they rock. I've worked with them a couple times, and these guys play as if they've been playing it for years.
Yeah, man. Oh, yeah. In a former life, my fantasy was to be like in the studio live room conducting an orchestra for like a film score. So I basically wanted to be John Williams forever.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's so cool. So, it's the next best thing, remoting into Budapest. But
that's right.
All those European orchestras are killer.
Oh, yeah. They're amazing. And I'm going to get footage of the whole thing, too. Like even though I haven't released as many videos about sharing the process, I have been documenting it all. And I'm basically just sitting on it until the energy feels right to talk about some stuff. So there'll definitely be some things coming up on YouTube about like the process of these next phases of the album.
I love it. I'm super excited. Did you started your pre-order already? I didn't pre-order it yet. Did I?
I don't remember, but it's cool either way.
I got to do it. The whole process has been really interesting to watch, and I'm excited to put links to things in the show notes and like start sharing things with people when this comes out.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. On that. So where can people find you online or learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, I'd say YouTube's kind of my main hub. So you can just look up my name, youtube.com/Zach Heyde. And then I also have my website, which has some of my more like professional work and then some ways you can work with me if you're interested.
That's awesome, man. Zach, you're a beast, dude. Thank you so much for being here.
Dude, you too, man. My pleasure.
Okay, that's a wrap on my conversation with Zach. If his insights about balancing creativity with making a living hit home for you, you'll definitely want to check out his YouTube channel. Just search Zach Heyde. That's Zach with an H and Heyde, Heyde. He's got almost 2 decades of content up there, plus he documented his entire album creation process, which is fascinating to watch. If you got something out of this conversation, here's how you can help keep these things going. Subscribe to No Set Path wherever you listen to your podcasts. Hit that follow button on my YouTube channel for video versions of these interviews. And if you want deeper thoughts on creativity and business, sign up for my newsletter, Creative Balance. There's links for all these things in the show notes. Your support makes a huge difference. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.